HS3 to 3282 from your Docomo Pacific prepaid phone to sign up today. Docomo Pacific. Better together. Some conditions apply.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Tall Tales for Thursday, the 28th of February. I'm Daryl Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, who will be back in 7 days, 1 week. That's the countdown, 7 days to go. And Bob will be back with us, and we'll be enjoying his version of Tall Tales. But in the meantime, let's we've got a couple of hours together this afternoon, and we have an article about Second Amendment, and then we'll be taking a look at Zami Ikatni and some other things going on about town. If you've got something on your mind, by all means, call and let us know what that is. Our telephone number here is 888-8255. We'd love to hear from you this afternoon. You can also find us on Facebook. Let's see. I need to pull you up so I can see you on Facebook and here in the studio. And then we will. Oh, there we are. All right. Nope. Let's see. Anyway, we will get to that in just a moment, but let's go ahead and take a look at the Second Amendment article that I've got for you this afternoon. It's coming out of the New York Times, and something that you should be aware of, so you can form an opinion on it, and that is, where is it? There it is. A guide to the House's first major gun control vote in years. This is New York Times, February 27th, which is the current edition. And let's see. I'm still trying to get your up for so I can see your comments here on Facebook here in the studio. And it's still not doing it. Let's see. Anyway, New York Times, February 27th, Washington. The House this week is set to pass the first major gun control legislation in over 2 decades, with Democratic lawmakers expected to approve 2 measures strengthening background checks for all firearms sales. The last time the House put high-profile legislation expanding gun control laws to a vote was in 1994, when it passed the federal assault weapons ban and made it illegal to manufacture a number of semi-automatic weapons for civilian use. That legislation expired after a decade and was not renewed by a Republican-controlled Congress. But riding a new wave of urgency after a series of mass shootings and the activism inspired by the school massacre in Parkland, Florida last February, in which 17 students and teachers were killed, House Democrats have pledged to take meaningful action on the issue, beginning with the twin bills. Here's what you need to know about the measures and their odds in the Senate. What do the bills do? The Bipartisan Background Checks Act, which the House will take up on Wednesday, requires universal background checks, closing a loophole for buyers at gun shows and online. The legislation, sponsored by Representative Mike Thompson, Democrat of California, and chairman of the House Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, also prohibits firearms transfers by a person who is not a licensed dealer. There are a number of exceptions, though, such as family member giving a firearm as a gift or lending a gun to someone in imminent danger. The second piece of legislation, the Enhanced Background Checks Act, will be voted on Thursday. Sponsored by Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina, the majority whip, The bill seeks to extend the initial background check review period to 10 days from 3. Under federal law, the FBI has 3 business days to perform its review and determine whether there is sufficient evidence to deny a purchase. If it is unable to do so, on the 4th day, the customer can return to the dealer and buy a gun. That loophole allowed Dylan S. Roof, the man who killed 9 people at a historically black church in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015, to purchase a .45 caliber handgun, even though he had previously admitted to drug possession, which should have barred him from legally obtaining the weapon. And I'm pausing because as I printed this out, some of the words were in color and they're not showing up on this. So I'm going to sort of Well, I can see that I'm on, but I don't see myself here in studio, so I can see your comments. A vast majority of something, including those in Newtown, Connecticut, San Bernardino, California, and Las Vegas, were bought legally and after the gunman passed a federal background check. At least 9 attackers had criminal histories or documented mental health problems that did not prevent them from obtaining their weapons. Quote, the new gun control restrictions currently being considered by the Democratic majority in H.R. 8 would not have prevented my shooting. Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana, the Republican whip, said of the Bipartisan Background Checks Act. Mr. Scalise was gravely wounded in 2017 when a gunman basically opened fire on him while the congressional baseball team was practicing in Virginia. You remember that. But gun control advocates have praised the measure as a meaningful step toward change and described the legislation as a necessary foundation for future work. Last year, the existing background check system identified and denied 88,000 gun sales to prohibited buyers, including criminals and domestic abusers. Then according to Mr. Thompson's office, those same people are currently able to make purchases at gun shows or online. Quote, we have fairly weak gun laws, and we have loopholes that make it easy to have the levels of gun violence that we have now. And we certainly have to do more to address it, said Robin Lloyd, the managing director of the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. But it is a critical first step. The bills introduced by House Democrats closely mirror the last major attempt in the Senate to pass a gun control measure. Efforts led by Senator Patrick Toomey, Republican of Pennsylvania, and Senator Joe Manchin III, Democrat of West Virginia, to require background checks at gun shows and online failed in the Democratic-led Senate in 2013 and again in the Republican-led Senate in 2015. Otherwise, in the last 2 decades, most firearms legislation taken up by Congress has aimed to relax gun laws, such as attempts in the House and Senate to pass a concealed carry reciprocity law, allowing a person permitted to carry a concealed weapon in one state to carry it in every state. Despite the praise the legislation has received, it faces dim prospects in the Republican-controlled Senate. Only 2 Republicans who backed the Toomey-Manchin legislation, Mr. Toomey and Senator Susan Collins of Maine, are still serving in the chamber. And Senator John Thune of South Dakota, the number 2 Republican, said on Tuesday that the Senate would not take up the bills. And so you may hear about efforts to tighten well, actually make a longer review period so the FBI would have more time to dig through and do a thorough search before returning, answering back to the venue that's proposing to sell the gun, whether there's a restriction on the buyer from 3 days to 10 days. But these bills are not likely to proceed past the Senate because of just that's the the nature of representation in the United States. They are representing their constituents, and so the particular mix we have now in the Congress is not inclined to agree to gain consensus on these proposals. And so that was a guide to the House's first major gun control legislation in years, from the New York Times, February 27th there, 28th here. And so on to Zami Katni. Well, you know, I'd like to take a look and see what we've got for our comments online, but I'm only getting the 27th, Real Joe. I don't see the 28th here on my screen, so I'm not sure. I see myself up in the big screen up there.
You try searching on the point?
Well, I guess I'll have to do that.
Yeah, just put in the search bar the point, and then it should be there on top.
Let's see. It should be. I see myself there already. There we go. Okay, thank you so much. I guess, you know, it's... I should spend more time with this. Spend more time with Facebook. Doesn't sound like the thing to do, but you know, if I want the tools, I guess I have to spend the time with it. Nate Horn says, "Hafaday, Daryl," and Mo Cotton says, "I'm here. All is well." I'm happy to hear that. Irenios and Nicholas Jr. says they have no idea what they're talking about. You know, that's kind of why we've got so many people involved in a representative body. You have to gain consensus. You need to convince a majority of your colleagues that what you propose is right, and it has to resonate with them in their home districts. And if you cannot, then, well, you haven't done your job, if you want to get something like that through. And if it doesn't resonate, maybe no matter how hard you try, it doesn't have the political support throughout the United States to make it a generally applicable standard. The same applies to statehood for Puerto Rico. If the representatives of the congressional districts, the 435 congressional districts, if the majority of the members from those districts don't think that statehood for Puerto Rico is something they want to do, then the proposals won't advance. And then even if they do advance in the House, if the senators, if you don't get 51 of them, or depending on the, some questions require 60. If you don't have those votes, you can't persuade those who are not ready to move on the question to see it your way. Well, then it's going to have to wait another year, another election, and another evolution, part of the evolution of the United States. And that's just how the system is set up. So a lot of what we see in the news is sort of posturing and trying to put some pressure on those elected representatives through the media to buck up and keep their positions or soften their positions and see it the other way. That's the nature of politics, that's the nature of the media, and the nature of political activism. And so there isn't actually a right or a wrong, unless you're talking about violence or something that's outside the bounds of the Constitution, or you're breaking laws to get there. But otherwise, everything goes, because that's the nature of a free country. So thank you, Irenia, for your comment. Oh, sorry, he clarifies this. He said, what I was saying is extending the holding period from 3 to 10 days is pointless. I haven't seen the testimony, but it may be that the 3 days, it may be that if you don't hear back from the FBI with a denial within 3 days, then you can go ahead and sell. And maybe 3 days is not enough for them to to run through their listings. And we've already seen that even though the FBI, which is the central reviewing point, they're supposed to have accurate records from all the states. So the person that's denied for a good reason in one state can't move to another state and make application and deny and be able to evade scrutiny. But as we've seen, the states don't always have accurate records or up-to-date records that they're providing to the FBI. So that's another drawback. But that's why they were saying they're just trying to move in that direction. But even at that, there's no consensus on that. So just go buy a gun and don't worry about it. There's actually stronger laws on Guam than there are in most of the states. And so, let's see, Denise Legaspi said, finest example of senators screwing the people for their paris. And let's see, the losers that get voted out of office for being a screw-up are now directors. You must be talking about local politics, Denise. I know Mike Pompeo was a Republican congressman who was brought out, who was asked to come out of the Congress and take up a position in the administration, the federal administration. And so was Jeff Sessions, a very fine senator from a southern state. And even though he had positions that people would oppose strongly over the years, he was widely respected for his convictions and his ability to defend his convictions defend them well. But you must be talking about here. And then she said, Denise continues, sooner or later the people are going to get fed up and stop voting for paris. You know, at some point, you're right. But at some point, the paris may be able to prove themselves competent. And since they're drawing the salary, they've got to be competent. Or it's a reflection on the governor, on the appointing authority. And then you remember that in the next election, when you've got a do-nothing director, somebody who's content to simply babysit the agency and make sure the paychecks are signed and nothing else. Now, you remember, I've told you this, Denise, and everyone else out there. I was a cabinet director for Governor Calvo as a Democrat. He asked me to come in. And there was lots of pressure on him from relatives of mine who were close to him in the campaign, very close. And these are relatives of mine that we've had. I love them dearly. They're my favorites. And they are die-hard Republicans. And we just laugh and have a good time every time we're together. It doesn't matter. But they were lobbying him since the beginning of the first campaign 9 years ago to be part of that campaign. And I said, no, there's plenty of people that Governor Calvo or candidate Calvo can call upon to run the government. And after about 5 years of that, he ran into me one day at church and he said, I really need for you to come in and fill out your application. I got a place for you. So sometimes it works out okay. We have a lot of smart people here on this island, and pari or not. The question is whether you're going to put the screws to your pari to work and do what needs to get done. And if it can be done that way, we can get some things going here. What counts is the results. It doesn't matter who. What counts is the results. And I would hate to say that we can't even trust our own family, friends, and neighbors to get done, that we have to go outside and get somebody completely outside. Let's go to Bakersfield, California, and get the city manager to come out here and clean our clocks. Really? I don't think that's necessary. I think that once we start paying somebody $80,000 a year, $110,000 a year. We should expect $110,000 of obvious output. That's what I think. That if you take the job, then as a matter of self-respect, you should do the work. And Denise says they are not there to serve themselves but the people. Yes, and she also says, I doubt it. They're not there to serve themselves but the people. Yes, that's right. And in the media, and those of you who are interacting with us on talk radio and writing columns to the two print newspapers and speaking out on blogs and showing up at demonstrations, showing up at public hearings, and even showing up at the, how many of you showed up for these confirmation hearings? If those of you who know that that's a person who's not competent, then you should show up and say so. And that's another part, that's the other side of the party system. We don't like to criticize each other around here publicly. Sure, we know the dirt on them, but we don't want to go out in public and say, hey, that is not a birthmark. That is a stain from the time that he did this. You know? But you don't want to do that. Very few people want to do that. But the system is set up to do it that way. And it's set up for a much larger population where you can kind of melt back into the background and go about your life. But around here, you know, we know who you are as soon as you get in front of the camera on the TV. Oh yeah, I know her. So, you know, it's our responsibility to keep this malarkey from continuing. And it is the people that we've elected. Go to them and say, look, I voted for you. I campaigned for you. I am for you. But if you're not going to be for everyone, I'll be your worst enemy politically. And I will talk about this, not against you, I love you, but I'll talk about you every time I walk into the Payless, I walk into Cost You Less, if somebody sees me, I'm going to go, right? So watch out. And if about 30, 50 people do that, they'll start to get the message. You don't hear me being quiet. And these are all my friends. These are all the people I came up through politics with on Guam for the last 35 years. So, you know, it's fun, isn't it? It's not a spectator sport, though. It takes some guts to get in and mix it up. And these guys are taking their chances. They're getting in and mixing it up. Look at Josh Tenorio. I've known him since he was, what, 12, 10, something like that. And I see where he is, and God bless him. Go for it. Now that he's in there, now he has to serve. In that capacity. He has served in other capacities. Now he has to serve in that capacity. To our satisfaction. And so if you know him, let him know that. And that's where the party system is actually a benefit. People in the States, they wish they had the party system. They really do. And then, let's see who says, oh, Denise says, that's why the politicians run from me. Good. Now we need about 50 more of you. Or 100 more of you. Exactly, Denise. They don't like my mouth either. I'm going to get to the editorial. It's almost time for a break here, but I should tell you that when I was working under previous administrations, it didn't happen so much under the Cowell administration, but under previous administrations, I would walk into the cabinet conference room for a meeting, and when I walked in, it was like watching fish in the ocean. The fish would one fish would come in, and then other fish would either go away or come towards. The crowd would separate out. There would be people who didn't want to be in the same visual frame as me, and there were people who would come over to say hi and shake my hand and see how I'm doing. And it would settle out like that. It was interesting to watch, and other people would see it. And so here I am talking tall tales with you on on a beautiful Thursday afternoon on Guam. We'll be back after we hear John Gibson, because he's digging up history.
John Gibson, digging up history. The guy who invented the flashlight but missed out on making millions bounced back with another invention that also made millions. That story after this. Let's talk heirloom sheets and towels from Redland Cotton in Alabama. First, the family farm, growing the finest cotton in the world. The spinning, the looming, every step made in America, right down to the cutting and sewing. Sheets designed from a long-lost 1920s weave. The softest, most comfortable, longest-lasting sheets you've ever slept on. The Redland family, dedicated to America and linens you'll treasure. Check out redlandcotton.com for America's linen. redlandcotton.com. Joshua L. Cowan invented a metal tube that contains small batteries and a light bulb on the end. Sounds like a flashlight, right? Yeah. But Cowan's idea was to use the tube to light up flower pots. His partner thought that was harebrained, bought him out, and made millions with the ever-ready flashlight and battery company. But Cowan wasn't finished. He'd had a passion for miniature model trains since he was a kid. When he invented a small electric motor for a fan, he realized it was the perfect engine for his model trains. He formed another company for the model trains and made millions. You know him. Joshua L. Cowan's middle name was Lionel, and he founded the Lionel Model Train Empire. I'm John Gibson, digging up history.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Are there common warning signs that your job may be in jeopardy? Would these be direct indicators or perhaps more subtle? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll give you a list of things you might want to keep an eye on.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
Yeah, so welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm Daryl Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, who will be back in 7 days. Count them, 7 days. And before the break, we were getting ready to start Zami Ikatni, but we've got a little discussion going with Denise Legaspi online. And she was saying, I harass politicians for fun. And then she said, Mike St. has blocked and deleted me. I called him out on his cheating. I found him under Madeline's canopy stumping for voters. Oh, that is really, you know, everyone sees that. He doesn't fool anyone, acting sly and slick like that. I'll tell you about my beef with him. I was going around making courtesy calls on the senators, asking for, actually asking whether they had any questions for me before my confirmation hearing. You know, I was going to sit there and I was going to listen to their concerns so I could address it, or, you know, because I was nominated by the governor and my confirmation hearing date was coming up. And while his office was next to Speaker Wampat's office, and so I walked into both and asked if I could see them, and the Speaker's office said, yes, she'll see you in about a half hour, and just wait, she's with somebody right now. And I said, okay, I walked next door to Mike St. Nicholas's office, and I saw him walk in, and the staff kind of went, I don't know if he's got time. I don't even know if he's here. I said, yeah, I know. I saw him just walk in, but I know he's got a back door. So, yeah, maybe he went out the back door. But tell you what, let him know I want to make an appointment to see him and to request his support, and also to give him an opportunity to let me know of any concerns he may have about me or the agency. And so we can, I'd like to find out what his thoughts are about this. So I can, if I'm in position to assist, I can assist and incorporate his sensibilities into the way I proceed, if I am confirmed. And he's the one senator I could not see, even though he was there. And I'm talking about several times going back to see him. I tried to get there, waited, called, dropped by. to talk to the staff. They were clearly embarrassed, and he was clearly avoiding me. Then he was, during my hearing, it was Atan Baba the whole time, and it's like, what? 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 But I wasn't going to ask him what his problem was in front of everybody, but I don't know what his problem was with me. But yeah, that kind of thing goes around. It goes around. And if I had been in position to campaign this last go-round, but I'm not, because I'm watching my dad. I can't get away. I couldn't be involved. I don't have that kind of freedom. And so otherwise I would have been trying to throw my weight around more than I did for one or another candidate, or a number of them. But thank you, Denise, for poking me here and getting me to talk about stuff. Anybody else? Go ahead. I mean, I'm good for it here. 888-8255, or go to Facebook and whammer jammer your comments to me on the text line on the side. Facebook Live, also on YouTube, but I don't have comments from the YouTube site. So, but thank you for joining me this afternoon. Doing the right things for all taxpayers isn't what senators are about, is the editorial today's Guam Daily Post. Let's take a look at what they have to say here. Wednesday's unanimous vote by the Guam legislature on Bill 3035 proved one thing: this isn't a legislature for all taxpayers. The senators who voted yes to the legislation that would give Guam Regional Medical City a financial windfall at the expense of taxpayers island-wide are doing their job for just one segment of the population. These are not senators who consider the interest of all island taxpayers. The unanimous vote on Bill 30 showed that the 35th Guam legislature prioritizes the interests of Government of Guam employees, retirees, and dependents who would benefit from Bill 30, the legislation that would require GovGuam's health insurance provider to cover private hospital care at GRMC. 13 of the 15 senators voted yes to Bill 30. Senator Therese Terlahi had an excused absence due to a family emergency, and Senator James Moylan had a family conflict, so he didn't vote. The remaining senators voted for Bill 30 without knowing the full cost of this legislation to taxpayers. The 13 senators, Democrats and Republicans, including Republicans who just 24 hours earlier held a press conference proclaiming to care about not piling on additional costs to island taxpayers, voted yes. These senators did so despite 3 fiscal notes from the Bureau of Budget and Management Research. Each of the 3 fiscal notes says the same thing. The Bureau is not able to determine the financial impact of this legislation on the tax-paying public. There have been warnings from island doctors and other concerned entities not affiliated with GRMC that the costs to GovGuam would escalate as a result of Bill 30. This didn't matter because all the 13 senators cared about in Wednesday's vote on Bill 30 is protecting their own and the Government of Guam employees and retirees' needs to get care at a private hospital at any cost. It didn't matter that this could harm Guam Memorial Hospital. It didn't matter that many of the same members of the community who would ultimately be paying this tab cannot afford to go to the private hospital or afford to get health insurance at all. It's a shame that an opportunity to do the right thing was missed or ignored. I'm going to take, you've heard me in the past, we've been at this since Friday, right? Since Bill 30 was put on the agenda. Since the advertisements started hitting the paper, full-size, full-page ads taken out by people who obviously have the money to buy 1 or 2 pages of the newspaper. And I'm not going to say that the editorial board was influenced by the amount of advertising dollars they were getting from the advocates or the opponents. You know, on average, were the opponents shoving more money at you than the proponents? I'm not going to say anything about that because I don't know. I didn't count the column inches or the pages. How many pages of advertising were purchased over the last week? But One thing's for sure, it's about money. And it is not clear, and that's what the fiscal notes said, there's no way to calculate what Bill 30's impact would be on taxpayers, because it's a negotiation, and it also depends on how the legislature and governor frame the costs for the next year's health insurance benefits. As you've heard me mention before, you can simply make the GovGuam employees pay more, a higher, whatever the difference in the cost of the insurance altogether. That the increase could be absorbed by the employees themselves and spread out all through all 11,000 GovGuam employees, which manages the cost. But it wouldn't be more to the taxpayer, because it would be shouldered in the premiums, and it would be paid for. If the difference in that, if there's an inflation, then let the GovGuam employees pay it through their premiums, and it wouldn't have an impact. How would BBMR know what the impact is going to be if they don't know what the parameters of the negotiation are going to end up being? So yeah, there is no. The numbers that have been thrown around back and forth are all self-serving numbers from people who are investing in their own part of the health industry on Guam. And they're trying to get a return on their investment. These are profit-making companies and doctors with clinics that are profit-making clinics, and they are charging whatever they have to make a profit. And they're also negotiating. GMH, all they got to do is show up at the legislature and say, I need this amount of money. Doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to matter to them how well they're collecting. And GRMC, they're accepting MIP and Medicare patients. They're not having to go to GMH. So you're not talking about the poorest, and you're not talking about the insured. You're only talking about the middle. And they're not insured, and maybe the government of Guam should organize them so that their health care costs are covered under some kind of a utilization review program. A friend of mine was telling me today that Medicare and Medicaid only have a 2% administrative cost, because they work it all out in advance, and they say, here's our cost, this is what we'll pay you for these procedures. And it's nationwide. Take it or leave it. And the doctors can say, sure, I'll take those patients, or no, I won't take those patients. And if government of Guam were to organize them, not under a health insurance company, but organize them through a program at Public Health where we already know how many people are the ones administering the eligibility and doing the forms and whatnot. We would know what it costs, and we would pay. And then GMH would not go to the legislature for appropriations except for specific things that they need that are not covered under their business plan, that it would include necessarily what they would squirrel away for capital improvements, say. But they would be on a plan that requires an outside review on the sufficiency of their fees. Up to now, for the last 20 years, and that's what came out of the OPA report, the private insurance companies are not paying all of the bill. They negotiate the rate, how much they pay. And if they pay 70%, which is the number I've been hearing, then the shortfall goes back to self-pay, even if you've got health insurance. Even if and Medicare, Medicaid, right? The portion that's not paid by them, because of the difference between that and the fee schedule, they throw it back into that pot that is self-pay. And then they don't bother trying to collect it because it's a mess. And if they were in court trying to enforce any of it, they'd be laughed out of the room. What we really need is objective scrutiny on GMH and for the government of Guam to have a health care financing policy that will optimize the use of taxpayer money to get this done. That we have models that we can use, and we have employees and structures that we can put in place. We don't have to outsource it to companies that are looking at something like 25% administrative overhead, 15% administrative overhead. If we can get it done with line agencies, using the concepts in private sector, but administering it with a lower overhead, because you don't have to pay profits, you don't have to finance loans, and you don't have to satisfy investors. I don't hear any of that going on, and I tell you, there's nothing that prevents them from doing it. Nothing at all. Even Obamacare was a concession to the private sector. They said, okay, we'll allow these companies to be set up and go for the uninsured portion. And we'll allow those to be formed and take and require them to cover pre-existing. And also make a profit, not being run by the government. Now, in the newspaper today, there was because Obamacare has been pushed back and watered down and resisted over the last 8 years or so of Republican leadership in the Congress. Now, where is it? I just saw it. It has to do with there's 100 members of the new U.S. House of Representatives signed on to Medicare for all. There's not enough votes to make it happen. But this is sort of it's somewhere in there. It is the fruit of the seed that's planted. There's healthcare costs are not being contained. And the government is on the hook because it keeps driving up the cost of indigent health care and health care like Medicare for elderly. It keeps driving up those costs, and the government keeps facing rising costs. But instead of the government using its power in the market and its power to organize markets to get a handle on rising costs, it's throwing up its hands and saying, well, whatever happens. But this editorial today in the Guam Daily Post doesn't even display any kind of understanding of what's going on here on Guam. And this is a manageable situation. You can see it. You can see what's going on. So no blue star for you today, guys. And then in the PDN, the opinion page has, for their view, they're just recopying something from the USA Today editorial board, which is to-do list for the summit. And they point out the obvious: North Korea talks have seen little progress. Well, yeah, it would be really nice if the Pacific Daily News would go through and draw up an editorial about a to-do list for those of us here on Guam expecting our president to negotiate in a way that is going to keep us safe. So I'm not even going to read this. I didn't read it at the time. I mean, there's a whole president in Vietnam talking to the leader of North Korea. Well, how am I supposed to add anything to that conversation? So I'm not going to do that. Let's take a break here. It's 10 minutes to 5, and we are enjoying Tall Tales for Thursday, the 28th of February. I'll be back in just a few moments.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Attention homeowners, MRE solar energy systems now come with battery storage for zero money down. This means that your home will have power even when the island power isn't available, like during power outages or during and after storms. The inconvenience of not having power for your home is a thing of the past. It's solar with battery storage exclusively by Micronesia Renewable Energy. Don't be left in the dark. Call 632-2613 for a free consultation. MRE, the smarter choice.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. I've been talking about a few things here and just finishing up with the Zami Ikatni. And yeah, the to-do list for the summit. Yeah, we know that there's a lot to do, and we've been living with it since before I was born. Korean War, right? The armistice was signed a year before I was born. Denise Legaspi was tapping out a few more messages here about her relationship with Mike Siniclas. Mike Siniclas has blocked and deleted me. Well, he can try. He can try to block and delete you, but I'm sure you're going to come squirting out somewhere else. He can't live in the world of social media and virtual offices. He can't. There are, real flesh and blood voters who go and use a pencil to mark their ballots. And so, he's got to watch out for those of us who still use pencil. He can't live in a virtual world. And he was in the financial. There was something in the news about some fireworks over in Congress, had to do with a committee that he's so proud to be part of, Financial Services Committee. And so I was kind of looking for him on the dais, during the hearing. So I didn't see him, but I'm sure he was there somewhere. And then Denise says, I cornered Mike under the canopy, and they called him out for cheating. And then she continues, also, B.J. Cruz is another piece of work. BJ has a long and storied history. One of these days, somebody's going to recount all the different things he's been doing. It's like he's been playing hopscotch through life. And, I've enjoyed watching him over the years. I first met him when he was an attorney, a government attorney on the staff of Governor Berdalio. And then he was appointed to the Guam, to the governor's office in Washington, D.C., with Bernice Carbolito as his staff assistant, to represent the governor of Guam. And this was back in 85, 86. And then he came back. He was appointed as a judge, and then he was, going through there. But he's been as a person and as a public servant, he has the widest variety of experiences of anybody I can recall, since Mr. Wampat. And I like him as a person, and we have our differences, and we have our unshakable things in common. And it's whether you like him or not, the good thing about it is you can actually change his, if you can convince him to change his position, change his mind, it can be done. He can see things your way. So, but thank you, Denise. And also, since B.J. Cruz is our public auditor, the same goes to him. He's got to do his job. He asked for the job, we voted him in, and now he's got to do the job. And if he can be productive in his position for what needs to be done in 2019, not comparing him to anybody previous, but if he can do the job that needs to be done this year, right now, then he will be an example of how others are supposed to be doing their jobs and working at a high level of competency and purpose, sense of purpose, and a realization of what needs to get done and solve some problems around here. So Prudential Mano online says, Kim-Trump summit to end Korea War? That's one of the, it'd be a nice thing to do, wouldn't it? But no, I think they made a deal for Boeing to sell airplanes. And so he's working, our president's working on kicking up some export, getting some of those dollars back into the United States. Using Vietnam and its economic success over the last 10, 15 years, use their economic success to build up American jobs, manufacturing jobs for export. Nate Horn says, PDN's been lazy lately. Lots of copy-paste from USA Today. I've noticed that. There are some that really should be, really is just filler. But I'm kind of concerned about what's going on over there because it's not a good thing for our local newspapers to drop back to just one. I'd hate to see the PDN go away, as much as I love seeing the Post come up. But the competition between the two of them benefits us. And it's hard to run a rag, something that you actually have to print and distribute on deadline in physical copy. It's much easier to do a blog or, if you walk away from a blog, go to, vacation in the Seychelles or someplace, it's not going to, nobody's going to mind. But what happens when their printing press goes down? They got to go get somebody down the street to print their papers. And it comes into it doesn't get distributed to the houses for a day or two. It's a heavy haul. But, you and I here on Tall Tales, we're concerned with the content of the papers. And I'm concerned that perhaps they are not picking up the talent that they need, the journalistic talent that they need to keep that all going. Where's that music? Yeah, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Let's see. Richard Leon says, comment on Candid News? Candid News? I guess that's a place I should probably go. Maybe I'll do it during the halftime. It's a minute before 5 o'clock. Time for our halftime show, Fox News, see what's going on nationwide, and maybe with the Trump talks, because it's the middle of the day over in Vietnam. And we'll be back after our halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
This is a Fox News alert. The summit wraps up with no agreement. The high-stakes summit between President Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un comes to a close in Vietnam, surprisingly an hour earlier than expected. The White House acknowledging just moments ago the two leaders did not sign an agreement. Fox's Ed Henry is in Hanoi.
The White House is acknowledging they do not have a deal. They had planned for a signing ceremony. But these are the facts. The White House and the president's going to have a chance to make his case, perhaps, for why you could still make progress even if you don't have a deal. And when she says we look forward to the next summit, they're leaving the door open to more talks. But they wanted to go home with something when you schedule a signing ceremony, and that's been canceled.
Ed Henry referring to White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders and talking about future talks. Now, President Trump may answer all those questions about why no deal and what's next during a press conference that he is expected to hold at any moment now. Well, a couple of hours ago, President Trump and Kim Jong-un held an unprecedented Q&A session with reporters. At that time, an American reporter asking Kim if he was really serious about denuclearization.
If I'm not willing to do that, I won't be here right now.
That's a good answer. Wow, that might be the best answer you've ever heard.
Well, it was thought at that time the summit was bringing the two countries closer to establishing formal ties. Kim answering another question, telling reporters that he would welcome an opening of a U.S. liaison office in North Korea. Well, President Trump, again, is scheduled to begin a press conference in Hanoi to explain what the developments are for this summit, after which he will board Air Force One immediately to return to Washington. And again, we will bring you more on that press conference. This is Fox News.
Great news from Exchange, Guam's #1 online and mobile remittance service to the Philippines. Get a chance to win a trip for two to Manila with 3 days and 2 nights accommodations at the Belmont Hotel at Resorts World Manila. Here's how to join. Download the Exchange app or visit exchange.me. Sign up and send money to the Philippines. You can also visit the Exchange office inside the iConnect building in Upper Tumon. Promo ends May 2nd, 2019. Call 888-736-3 for more information. Conditions apply. Take advantage of Exchange Dollar to Remit promo. Visit exchange.me for details.
Make the good things last longer. Get 3 more days for free on our 3-day prepaid rate plan. That's 6 days of unlimited local calls, SMS, and 1 gig of 4G LTE data per day for just $7.95. Text HS3 to 3282 from your Docomo Pacific prepaid phone to sign up today. Docomo Pacific, better together. Some conditions apply.
Breaking news, President Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un failed to reach an agreement during their summit in Vietnam, but the White House says talks between the two nations will continue in the future. White House spokesperson Sarah Sanders says that the two leaders did discuss denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and that the countries' respective teams look forward to meeting in the future. Still, Sanders is describing the meetings between President Trump and Kim Jong-un as very good and constructive. The president has departed the hotel where the meetings for the summit have been held, where the negotiations have been going on today, and he left far earlier than planned, and news coming just a short time ago that the two leaders did not sign an agreement as they had planned, that the signing ceremony has been scrapped. We're waiting now for President Trump to begin a press conference in Hanoi with the latest developments. In other news, Michael Cohen claims he wants to make things right. President Trump's former attorney and fixer testifying for 7 hours before the House Oversight Committee yesterday.
Mr. Trump's former fixer telling lawmakers he needs to fix one more thing.
I am here under oath to correct the record, to answer the committee's questions truthfully, and to offer the American people what I know about President Trump.
Cohen not mincing his words.
I am ashamed because I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat.
From the outset, Republicans urged their colleagues not to forget Cohen's track record with the truth.
That's Fox's Catherine Herridge in Washington. Again, our top story, the U.S. and North Korea end their summit in Vietnam without any deal. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Laddystone Entertainment and the stations of Choice Broadcasting present a roaring 20s party. Great Gatsby style. Get dressed up and party with the Miss and Mrs. Kirby Guam contestants. Saturday, March 2nd at Roots Bar and Grill. Tickets are $10 or $15 at the door with one free drink. Special thanks to Pitbull Empire, Local Promos, One Punch Media, The Hive, and Island Lux.
At Chili's, our burgers stack up with anyone's. Handcrafted to order, smashed to lock in flavor on a toasted brioche bun. Our burgers are all kinds of perfect. Choose from the Chili's Chili, the Mushroom Swiss, the Ultimate Bacon, or you know what? We dare you to take on the Boss Burger. Loaded with smoked brisket, rib meat, jalapeno cheddar sausage, and bacon. We may have really out-burgered ourselves. Our burgers are more than a handful, served with garlic dill pickles and fries. So hurry in today and enjoy our juicy, melty, yummy, handcrafted creations. Perfection between two buns. Chili's. More life happens here.
Welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm Darrell Taggarty, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, who will be back in 7 days. 7 days. And so we are in our, well, it's drive time now. And for those of you who are with me from the top of the show, thank you very much for joining me. Richard Leon tossed down a challenge as I was talking about the newspapers. And he was asking me to comment on Candid News. And so, I don't live online. So I just went ahead online and took a look at it. And yeah, I see what it is. It's Troy Torres, and he has a line. He has himself a line on a number of people who are willing to talk to him in ways that they do not talk to the reporters at the PDN or the Post. And the reporters, the journalists at PDN and Post, don't have the kind of reach. And so when I was talking about PDN and the Post editorial board, or the reporters, and the depth of understanding they have of what's going on the island, and it not showing up in their newspapers. But then when you go to Candid News, you've got stories that are not in the newspapers, not even mentioned in the newspapers. Now, I'm not sure how much of what Candid News is putting out would pass objective muster, objective standards of journalism, versus an agenda that Troy has and has yet to reveal. Same thing could be said about me. What's my agenda? So it's not a criticism, just an observation. But Candid News has some very interesting stories, and stories that should actually be pursued by law enforcement. And they are stories that should be known to the wider public. And so, consistent with what I was saying before the break, it would seem to me that what PDN or Post would be good for them to do is to tap into people like Troy Torres and find ways to incorporate those articles instead of having them come out on Candid News on his own distribution, is to incorporate his work in their pages as an extension of what their own staff are doing, or even hire him, pay him by piece as a journalist and make him an honest, have him make an honest living as a journalist. Because that's what journalism's about. But if they're going to be more USA Today, or they're going to say, no, like at the Post, well, we've got our reporters and we're just going to go with them. Well, that's a limiting strategy. It's a limiting strategy. And so, in my opinion, it's limiting. And the same thing could be said for this radio station. Who are they bringing in? It could have been somebody else sitting here. Or another talk radio station. Who do they bring in as moderator? And those perspectives are either going to grow or they're going to kill the industry or the particular business. And so that's my comment on Condit News. Interesting. I'm not going to amplify what's said because it's not clear whether he's picking and choosing so he can aim at a target. And I'm really not much of one for propaganda. I've seen propaganda do its damage throughout my lifetime, and we've had to resist it in a number of ways. In fact, I just opened up an email last night, and I printed it out, but I'm going to very carefully examine this for its veracity, its truthfulness. It's Gramsci and Frankfurt School, Quick and Dirty, Mutating Our Entire Society's Perception of Reality. I'm going to examine this because I don't just eat this stuff and leave it. And here's another one. Centrism and moderation? No thanks. In times of moral crisis, everyone picks a side, even those proclaiming neutrality. And I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to digest it, and then I'm going to apply my own thoughts and my own sense of values and my own intentions for the world. And I'll be the one to decide whether it resonates as truth or it is someone trying to lead me down the primrose path. So there was an article that came up. Let's see. We were talking over the past couple of weeks about H-2B workers and the Guam Contractors Association and the Chamber of Commerce and the companies that are out here to work on the buildup, and the difficulty of getting the need to have the H-2B workers approved for Guam, besides the ones for the military buildup, because those have been approved. But there was an article that appeared in the Associated Press. I think this was about 3 or 4 days ago. Associated Press article, worker visas in doubt as Trump immigration crackdown widens. So this is the context of our own problems here. And our governor is over at Congress begging them to lift the policy on H-2B workers. But it's not, Congress isn't doing it. It's the executive, the chief executive is doing it. He's giving directions on how the laws will be followed. And those laws are flexible enough to allow all the workers that came in to build the bases in the 1950s without ever having to have a visa. That's how wide. It's one line in the immigration code. And it's wide enough, and it's enough. The discretion is wide enough to either have a huge pipeline in or to close it off completely. That's how the law is written. That's Congress's policy on immigration. We've got a caller on line 1. Welcome to Tall Tales.
How you doing, Darryl? This is Tom.
Hello, Tom. How are you doing today?
All right, buddy.
I'm glad to hear it.
My take on that H-2B problem, I feel that it's high time that we should use this as a lesson learned to stop, to transition out of this H2 dependency on having H2 visa workers, foreign workers come into our island. We need, we can get this problem temporarily solved. Hopefully the governor succeeds, but we cannot allow this to continue to happen in the long run, because that's one of the things that's really killing our economy, is that when we bring in foreign workers to do work here, I would say over 90% of their salary they send back to the country where they come from for their families, and they just leave a little bit here for them to spend, to eat, or whatever, right? So
yeah,
we are really letting our money go to a foreign country because we continuously depend on bringing in foreign workers. And it's high time that we put a stop to it. If the government succeeds in getting this temporarily a relief and get us some H2B workers now, but for the long run, for the future, we need to do something about it. We need to stop being dependent on foreign workers. You see what I'm saying? Because
absolutely.
A lot of those money is just going back to the families of those workers that we bring into the island.
But the companies that hire them are making a profit, and they're spending that money here on Guam.
I know, but think about all those hourly rate that we pay these workers,
It's very low. It's $12, $14 an hour. That's why there's nobody locally who wants to take those jobs. Or if they do take the jobs, they want more money, but there's enough H2 workers to bring in that they won't get hired if they want more money. So with the skills they have, they go to the States. It used to be that once you had those skills here on Guam, as a welder, as a draftsman, as a surveyor, you'd work for the either you start your own business, or you would work for PwC, or work for Public Works. But those jobs are gone. And so there are people who are doing some of this work for the base operating contractor, and so they're getting more than the H-2B workers, and they're getting benefits under Guam law, so health insurance and stuff like that. But the industry, the construction industry, by and large, its salaries are and wages are suppressed because of the competition. And who wants to invest in workers if the workers are just going to take off? So the education that we have up at the Trades Academy, GCC, and other places, and even on-the-job training within the companies, if they think they're going to lose the workers to some other part of the U.S. economy, they won't invest in them. So the H-2B workers that come in are captive. They're not going to demand anymore, and even if their skills improve while they're here, they can be either shifted to another job or sent back. But they're not going to have, the companies that bring them in won't have to pay more. And this has been going on and on and on. So even though you say if the governor gets a temporary reprieve from this, but the pipeline's been shut for years, several years already. We're just choking on because the projects are down to just who's here, who's on island. So we're actually now depending on the ones that we have, and this is the only this is the only kind of condition that will allow the wages to start going up for people and start to attract locals into these trades. But every week we see headlines and efforts by our leaders to get the H-2B workers back in here. And so again, all the employers are holding out. They're holding out. But I'll tell you what, and it's been glimmered. I've seen glimmers of this in the latest comments, and that is we're going to start having to bring in people from other countries, Korea, Japan, like Okinawa, or Taiwan. But those places have worker shortages too. Those workers won't be cheap. So where are we going to bring them from? We're going to bring them from someplace in Africa. We're going to bring them from someplace in Eastern Europe, where it's eligible to come in as H-2B. But
and also, we don't know how talented they are,
Oh, but no, the talents have to be objectively proven. You remember when we had the Zwanich fishing vessels out here? Those were Croatians, and the Croatians are like Italians, and they're skilled. They're like something between an Italian and a German. And those Croatians, they all speak English, and they are tall, handsome, white, energetic, nice physique. They all look good, smell good. And so it's like Trump saying, oh yeah, why do we have to get immigration from these shithole countries when we can just get it from the countries that have the pretty girls? That kind of a thing goes on here.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I was listening to the conference that the governor was sitting in front of the panel, and one of the speakers of the panel was telling our governor that how can we justify Guam to continue to bring in foreign workers when we have so many people here in this country of the United States of America. They are unemployed and they're looking for jobs. So how can Guam continue to bring in foreign workers? Why can't they hire U.S. citizens to work instead of bringing in foreign workers? And I don't think our governor responded. I did not hear her respond to that comment that the panelists spoke.
No. How can she respond? Because it is in the U.S. Senate, the Republican Party has the majority. They have the chairmanships, and also that's what the article was that I was from the Associated Press. The worker visas in doubt as Trump immigration crackdown widens. It is a policy. It is the way that the United States is now using its immigration powers to choke off foreign labor in trades where there are plenty of Americans who can take these jobs. If we don't train our own from here, we're going to start getting people from California, from North Dakota, from Minnesota, from Massachusetts, who are going to come out here and they're going to take those jobs, and then they're going to organize, they're going to unionize, and then we're going to have problems.
Well,
we were supposed to be growing our own.
The governor should have responded that it's going to cost more to build homes than if we're going to have to bring in workers from the mainland, because they're going to demand a higher salary and more benefits, and then to transport them to Guam to work. Those are expenses. So that's what she should have responded, that the cost is going to skyrocket for construction in Guam, But I was waiting for her to respond with that, but she did not speak up.
Well, let me ask you, this is why I was saying that to me, I think we should be growing our own workers, because if we have our own workers, then the cost of building a home, the labor cost of building a home, the money will be spent here, and it won't be just little money. Yes, you can finance your home at the bank. You go to the bank and you get the loan, and you're going to pay for the house over 30 years. But there are people who are going to be paid for going to work every day in the construction industry, who are people who are paying taxes on Guam and going to the stores and spending their money, raising their families, buying cars, buying gas, not sitting in a barracks and just using one car to go back and forth to work every day, and only living on just a little bit of food and a little bit of expense and sending the rest of the money home. That's the model that you and I, and everyone else on this island has been enjoying over the years, it's suppressing cost. Yeah, it's keeping the cost of building homes low. But how many people are out there looking for jobs and can't get a good paying job when the industry is there, and it's not a temporary industry. The construction industry on Guam is fairly stable. But who benefits? It keeps the expense of building the bases down, and it keeps the expense of building homes down. And that is, to me, it's not a good enough reason to deny people the chance to have jobs on this island. That to me, it's more important to have jobs than it is to control cost by artificially suppressing. Because if you really wanted to control cost by suppressing cost, then we should have slavery all over again. You know, just bring in slaves and have slaves do everything, and we can have ourselves a good life by having government jobs and having these slaves live in, and we have all kinds of things that we can pat ourselves in the back for having a nice place to live, and it be cheap, and we don't have to pay too much for salaries because look, we have people working for us who make nothing, and it erodes who we are, and it keeps us from moving ahead. People who really want to move ahead are not playing that game. They go into the game in the States and they play that to win, and they're doing just fine. And we can have that out here, but we can't have a double standard where we're going to live on part slave and like up in the Northern Marianas. They did that for how many decades, and now they're trying to figure out how to wean themselves off of it because they didn't really make an economy that was self-sustaining. They don't have enough people working in the economy in the jobs that need to be done, including construction. They don't have enough people trained to do the jobs of construction, retail, all the service industries. Those are all people brought in.
And so it's too dependent on foreign workers, that's why.
That's right, and we are here. Our housing industry and the government, the military construction, they're both dependent on cheap labor. And they want the Filipino labor because it's not only it's cheapest because of the way that it's administered. It's easy to bring them in at a low dollar amount and then charge the hell out of them for the insider cost, like to pay their rent to their own employer, and it's a controlled labor market, and we need to break that up. And we will ourselves here on Guam benefit from that. Yes, costs are going to change. I was thinking about this on the way in, Tom.
Yeah.
Bob Klitzkie has a program called Tall Tales, and he'll be back in a week. If this show was, I'm not Bob Klitzkie, but if I had a show that had a name, it would probably be called Political Economy, because the politics drives our numbers in the economy, and the decisions that are made by our political leaders are the ones that make the economy. The economy does not run on its own. The economy is full of incentives and parameters that then people try to make a living through. And one of the parts that's like an untouchable is construction industry. And now I'm not a Trump supporter, but what he's doing right now is giving us an opportunity to build a construction industry on Guam that has construction workers that actually live here. And so, but thanks for bringing up the topic.
All right, buddy. I'll let other people chime in.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah, we're Tom, a regular caller. He's thinking about what's going on here on the island, and I know a lot of you are too. Listening and thinking, how is this all supposed to be fitting together? Because it seems like it's kind of disjointed and off center and off balance. How can it be off balance when we've got so many people working on the problem? Or are they just not concerned about the big picture? They only little picture, making sure they do just, make sure that that hamburger is flipped at exactly the right time. But we find that it's not even happening in the major systems like Public Works, or GMH, or, Public Health, or, the roads. Try driving down south, then go up to Jigo. And take a look at the roads. And it's time for our seventh inning stretch, so I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'll be back with you in just a few moments with more Tall Tales.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Are there common warning signs that your job may be in jeopardy? Would these be direct indicators or perhaps more subtle? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll give you a list of things you might want to keep an eye on.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Yes, indeed. We're still in the game. Win, lose, or draw. We're still in the game here on Tall Tales. I'm Darrell Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie. He'll be back in 7 days. 7 days. Let me take a look at this. Let me read to you this. Two things. One thing came in late yesterday on Facebook, and I was reading it just a couple minutes before 6 o'clock. Don Edquilani made a comment on Facebook that I copied and kept for reference today and in future shows. And he's saying, town halls and round tables needed to determine what is the appropriate, accurate perspective regarding the combined professional vocational training at GCC and Guam Trades Academy. In that we, Guam, can't or not capable to produce several hundred Guam residents, let alone several thousand Guam residents, construction workers needed to replace the requisite yet missing visa, H-2B visa, construction workers. Result, we, Guam, dropped the Guam economy ball, the Guam infrastructure economic stimulus cycle. In other words, $0 economic stimulus dollars for several years that would have benefited us with our Guam, with our everyday life. Standard of life, cost of living. Where is Guam's economic boom? We should be in the middle of it. What he's saying and not quite saying is that we should be investing in our own people to fill this gap. As long as there's a gap and as long as we've got construction coming, we prepare. And one way to prepare is by education. It's not just DOE. It's Trades Academy, GCC, and finding ways to get people into the jobs that are available as apprentices and on-the-job training. Give them the basic skills and safety courses and get them familiar with the world of work and the terminology of what it is that they're expected to do. Whether it's carpentry, masonry, electrical, driving equipment of various sizes, safety for roofing, roofing work, maintenance work for plumbing, painting, exterior water blasting and cleaning. This needs to be done. Or for the people who are already got some experience doing this, to get them certified so that they are eligible to work on on federal projects. So we don't have to have the base construction using workers from off-island. But they're getting the exception so they can get the $14, $17 welder. Only a non-U.S. welder would work for $17 an hour because that's not what they're getting in other places, especially with skills. There are some people I know on Guam with those skills, and they won't even work. First off, nobody's going to pay them, and they're not going to work for that amount of money. But they are skilled enough to weld underwater. They can sign their name better than they can with a pen with a welding torch. Underwater. We've got great skills here. And the people who are here, we've proven, especially when we go off island and we compete with others in the States, we are competitive. We've got the moxie, we've got the attitude, and there's no reason to simply say, that's, it was brain drain, and all we got left here is no brains. No, that's not so. That's what they used to call a cop-out. Don't see any more comments coming in on Facebook, but let me, we heard Don Edquilani's comment from yesterday, and I want to give you this Associated Press article and see how this resonates with you here. This just came out this week. Immigrants with specialized skills are being denied work visas or seeing applications get caught up in lengthy bureaucratic tangles under federal changes that some consider a contradiction to President Donald Trump's promise of a continued pathway to the U.S. for the most talented foreigners. Though getting what's known as an H-1B visa has never been a sure thing, immigration attorneys and employers who hire such workers say they've seen unprecedented disruptions in the approval process since Trump took office in 2017. Quote, "You see all these arguments that we want the best and the brightest coming here," said John Goslow, an immigration attorney in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Quote, "Yet we're seeing a full frontal assault on just all aspects of immigration." 3 months after taking office, Trump issued his, quote, "Buy American and Hire American" executive order, calling for H-1B changes to promote the hiring of Americans for jobs that might otherwise go to immigrants. Subsequent memos have allowed for greater discretion in denying applications without first requesting additional information from an applicant, tossed the deference given to people seeking to renew their H-1Bs, and raised concern that the government would revoke work permits for the spouses of H-1B holders. One order restricted companies' ability to use H-1B workers off-site at a customer's place of business, while another temporarily rescinded the option of paying for faster application processing. Attorneys who handle these applications say one of the biggest shifts is an increase in, quote, requests for evidence, or RFEs, from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. An RFE can delay a visa for months or longer, as applicants and employers are forced to submit additional documentation over things such as the applicability of a college degree to a prospective job or whether the wage being offered is appropriate. If that's a national story on what's going on for all countries, all visa applications for work in the U.S., why are we trying to swim against the tide? Why don't we just simply read the tea leaves ourselves and get on with it? Why is our governor going to the Senate and boo-hooing about how we're being mistreated at the hands of Donald Trump when they're the cheering squad? And they pride themselves in being the cheering squad. Donald Trump is doing exactly what they want to be done. So why is our governor going over there telling them, begging them? Does that help? Are we going to get better treatment? Or are we going to be just another whiny territory? Can't seem to keep from, peeing our pants. Can't wipe our own nose. You can tell. I know. Aye-a-day. And here's another one. USA Today. Catherine Lackey says half of nation's economists predicting 2020 recession. So you think that, things are all rosy and, things are great. A lot of people are very optimistic about America's future. And they should be. But that optimism should be specific to what they are personally familiar with as far as the sector of the economy that they are involved in, how they are poised to take advantage of opportunities that are emerging in the area of the economy that they know, that they're part of, that they're in. Business people who are investing in certain areas because they are sure this is all taking off. That's a good basis for optimism. Optimism can't be grounded in stirring exhortations of national might and right. Reminds me of those posters of of communist Chinese posters from the mid-1950s. Hey, we beat the Americans in Korea, and we're on the march continues. That stuff, it doesn't necessarily go anywhere. And then the conversion of communist China to a capitalist state with a communist China, a communist party overlay, wasn't done with a lot of fanfare and banners and waving of flags. They just quietly let it happen. They just quietly took off the shackles. It worked. So anyway, this is what Catherine Lackey says. Roughly half the nation's business economists say they think the U.S. economy will slip into recession by the end of next year, and 3/4 envision such a downturn beginning by the end of 2021. The finding comes from the latest survey from the National Association for Business Economics of its member economists. Just 10% of them say they foresee a recession beginning this year. At the other extreme, only 11% expect the economy to avoid a recession through 2021. The economy began its expansion in June 2009 when the Great Recession officially ended. If it endures beyond June this year, the expansion will become the longest on record. Compared with others, the current one has been tepid, with an annual economic growth averaging just slightly above 2%. But many economists say its modest pace has helped prolong the expansion, in part by keeping inflation in check. The NABE economists approve of the Federal Reserve's management of interest rates, with nearly 3/4 of them calling the Fed's policymaking, quote, about right. Having raised rates 4 times last year, the Fed and its chairman, Jerome Powell, have pledged to be, quote, patient about rates, which most analysts have taken to mean that they're done raising rates for at least a few months. Investors are collectively betting that the Fed won't raise its benchmark rate at all this year. But the NABE survey found that 39% of economists foresee one rate increase, and 26% say they think the Fed will raise rates twice this year. In other areas, the NABE survey found the economists were divided on how to address the government's swollen budget deficits, with about half of them favoring higher taxes and half favoring spending restraints. Among potential tax increases, 50% support a broad-based energy or carbon tax, and 48% support raising individual or corporate taxes. On a proposal by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a freshman New York Democrat, to raise the marginal tax rate on the very wealthy to 70%, 42% of respondents to the NABE survey said they thought such a tax would have a net negative effect. By contrast, 17% said they believed it would benefit the economy. An additional 33% of those surveyed said the effect could be negative or positive, depending on how the extra tax revenue was used. It's, are you doing something with it, or are you just kind of tossing tax increases out there willy-nilly and not doing anything? Does this sound like Guam? Well, this is the nation. And then the article finishes up. More than 90% of NABE economists said the increased tariffs that the Trump administration has imposed in its trade conflicts with China and other countries will slow economic growth this year. Their estimates range from a subtraction of 1/4 of a percentage point in growth to a reduction of 1 percentage point or more. So is the economy expanding more than the increase in population? If our growth is more than the increase in population, then the answer is yes. But if we have more people being born and immigrating, coming into the country, then we have growth in the economy, then it is a net negative. That's kind of how it works. And that's another reason why, if we were to keep the H-2 workers out and we were to grow the construction trades on Guam, it would be a net increase on our economy. You get it? And our economy needs to grow more than the number of people born or graduating from high school and not leaving to get jobs somewhere else. Just think, when was the last time we had a big employment boost here? Was it the National Guard? I think it was the National Guard. Big employment boost. Lots of people training to go fight someplace. Ready to leave, but they don't have to leave. They can live here while they train and have other jobs while they train. But when called, they'll be gone. And when they go, we will be suffering even fewer police, fire, name it, teachers, because of the dual role they're currently playing. And what we really need is to have, again, more investment in skills, like the military is doing through the National Guard, to people who are right here on Guam, and raising overall salaries. People with 2 jobs, they got a National Guard job and they have their teacher job. They have their National Guard job and they have their policeman job. More money. But when you see people you see people who are responding to recruitment for a plant in North Dakota that packs produce. That's desperation, both for them in North Dakota and for us here. Desperation meets desperation. Failure meets failure. They can't get H-2 workers to fill their factories, or seasonal workers to come up from Mexico, or illegal immigrants to come in and work. Yeah, undocumented immigrants can't work anymore in North Dakota. They're still there, but they can't work. They're in the schools. How are they eating? Their kids are in school. But how are the parents eating? Are they on state rolls so that we don't have people begging and starving and dying in the streets of North Dakota? It's a local problem, and it's got to be locally solved. And so what are the companies in North Dakota doing? They're coming out to places like Guam, where there are people here who don't have that problem of being called an illegal immigrant. And they're trying to get them to go up to North Dakota to a canning factory. You know, giblets and turkey. Aye-day. Well, it's 10 minutes to 6, once again, Real Joe. So let's take a break here, and we'll come back with more Tall Tales.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for our all-new Ultimate Cheesy Garlic Bread. How would you like it?
I'll take a skeptical grandma.
Set in her ways?
A smidge.
Grandma, try this Ultimate Meatball Marinara made with Ultimate Cheesy Garlic Bread. Melted mozzarella, Parmesan, garlic butter spread. It's just like yours.
Like mine? My grandmother's recipe?
Try it.
You know, my grandmother's cheesy garlic bread was never all that.
Subway, make it what you want. Limited time only at participating restaurants.
Attention homeowners. MRE solar energy systems now come with battery storage for zero money down. This means that your home will have power even when the island power isn't available, like during power outages or during and after storms. The inconvenience of not having power for your home is a thing of the past. It's solar with battery storage exclusively by Micronesia Renewable Energy. Don't be left in the dark. Call 632-2613 for a free consultation. MRE, the smarter choice.
And welcome back to Tall Tales for Thursday, February 28th. Bob Klitzkie returns in 7 days. We saw earlier that there was a mention in this transition report about human trafficking and stopping human trafficking on Guam. I think about 10 days ago or so, it was a topic in the paper about, you know, we need to address human trafficking on Guam. You know, we've had our, you know, Blue House case and some others, which were primarily, the interest in the Blue House case was driven by the involvement of 2 police officers who were who signed on as sort of a part-time job as resident heavies to keep the girls in line. But this is a problem that exists wherever you have people who are desperate, people who are like the Syrian refugees, people coming out of Syria and seeking safe haven in places like Lebanon and Turkey, where their families are separated and the younger women or older girls are separated out as potential wage earners to support their families. Separated out by people who are in business to do this sort of thing. You know, bring resources to a market and live off the fat of the land. You know, it's opportunity. It's risk taking and capitalism at its best. But the commodity. I'm not talking about the commodity of healthcare, Jack. I'm talking about the commodity of young flesh. Is Ryan Miller from USA Today says sex trafficking rampant across the U.S. And you know, sex trafficking accounted for 6,081 of the more than 8,500 reported cases of human trafficking in the U.S. in 2017. There's no official estimate of the total number of human trafficking victims in the United States. Polaris, a nonprofit that operates the hotline on human trafficking, estimates that the total number of victims nationally reaches into the hundreds of thousands when estimates of adults and minors and sex trafficking and labor trafficking are aggregated. Illicit massage or spa businesses similar to the ones in the Florida case, were the top location or industry where sex trafficking occurred in 2017, with 714 reported cases, according to the hotline's data. More than 9,000 illicit massage businesses operate in every state across the country, bringing in a stunning $2.5 billion each year, according to estimates in a 2018 report by Polaris on trafficking in those businesses. Quote, "It's not accurate to understand these cases as local," Bradley Miles, CEO of Polaris, told USA Today on Friday. Quote, "The places are being overlooked and underestimated." Characteristics of the average illegal spa that Polaris details fit with how prosecutors described ones in Florida. 10 spas were shut down in Orlando, Palm Beach County, and the Treasure Coast after several months of investigations revealed women there were in, quote, "sexual servitude," according to arrest records. At Orchids of Asia Day Spa in Jupiter, Florida, where Kraft allegedly paid for sexual services, women, many from China, lived in the spa and were not permitted to leave, according to Martin County Sheriff Will Snyder. Kraft, I'm talking about Robert Kraft of the New England Patriots, who has been charged but not arrested, denied the allegation. He is one of hundreds of alleged clients facing charges in the recent Florida stings. Miles said most of the spas are tied to larger criminal networks that have links to the countries where many of the women at the spas are from. Many of the women are coerced to work in the businesses and often earn no wages and have no autonomy, Miles said. Beyond sex trafficking at just massage spas, the United States prosecutes hundreds of cases each year and wins scores of convictions on charges of trafficking with respect to slavery and sex trafficking of children by force, fraud, or coercion, according to an analysis of federal records at the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse at Syracuse University. In fiscal year 2018, 189 cases resulted in convictions, according to their data. And let's see, the CEO and co-founder of Backpage.com pleaded guilty in April to charges of facilitating prostitution and money laundering after the Justice Department seized the controversial online classifieds site. The website's other co-founders, Michael Lacey and James Larkin, as well as 5 other executives, faced 93 charges. Now, if we have to wait until a member of the New England Patriots gets picked up in a sting to find out how little is being done by law enforcement to address the crime of prostitution as a business, not prostitution as a pastime or prostitution as a thing that a woman would do with her own body, but actually setting up a storefront. And it's not the person who sets up the storefront who's the one laying on the bed. And then there's coercion involved, and there's people coming in from outside the country, and there's, visa fraud, and there's, untracked money, and how many of them are right there down the street from where you live? Huh? The music is playing, which means I gotta make way for more fine programming on this radio station. I'm Darrell Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, who will be back in 7 days with Tall Tales. Ray Gibson is here tomorrow morning from 6 until 10. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon at 4. Have a very good evening, everyone.